Welcome, everyone, to Touching Base. I'm your host, Eric Arnold. And tonight, I'm joined by my friends, Andrew Naw and Andy Enck. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing tonight?
Good evening, sir.
We have a couple important discussions tonight. We want to talk about superstars in the DC, Baltimore area and kind of what they're going to do with their future contracts. And we also want to talk about the reason for a decline in baseball. But before we do any of that, the ever important question where we like to get together once a week, I always want to ask you guys, what are you drinking tonight?
I got my Mully's Bloody Orange again.
Oh, yeah. That's been a go-to for mine lately. I had to go out and get some more.
Nice.
I'm still cranking through. Oh, no, TGS.
No, you're not. Yeah. You not a sponsorship, sir.
Yeah.
There we go.
My Landshark collection is dwindling, although it seems to be back at the same number it was a few weeks ago. So I don't know if someone's playing the game with me or what, but
the magic trick.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just reappeared.
I should show them where my bank account is.
But yeah, see how that works out. I myself am also going with the Mully's. This time I'm going with one of their IPAs, the IPA. And I'm not normally an IPA guy, but I actually love their IPAs. So I'm going to be sipping on this for the evening, if you guys don't mind. So let's go ahead and get into it. I haven't seen you guys in a week. I really want to start off. We have several big name players in our area, and I'm going to go ahead and name them. Bradley Beal, Max Scherzer, Alexander Ovechkin, and Lamar Jackson. All of these guys I would consider to be not only stars, but I consider them to be superstars in our area. We've been blessed to have these talented guys make either MVP runs, Cy Young Award, scoring leaders, champions throughout the last few years. And it seems like now we're finally getting to a point where decisions have to be made with all of these players. And each of these teams are kind of in a different situation. And so I want to ask you guys essentially, what would you do with each of these guys? Because some of these guys have, expiring deals, or if not, next year they have an expiring deal. And there's some important decisions kind of about the DC, Baltimore, Maryland area. Our culture is about to change depending on what we do. So it's important. So the very first one I want to talk about, and he just got eliminated, is actually Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal was one of the top scorers in the league. I believe he finished second in the league in scoring this year. He's been kind of the face of the franchise. Even when Wall was here and he was hurt, Beal kind of molded into that go-to guy. Obviously a top 10 talent in the league. We haven't had one of those maybe since the Gilbert Arenas, time period. But only recently has he been able to consistently make a run in the playoffs. There was a couple of years ago where he and John Wall got to the Eastern Conference Finals, but they weren't able to get past the Celtics. Now we have a big decision to be made on him. Teams are all asking for him. What do you think? Is he a guy that we should keep around? Is he a guy that we're going to sign long-term, or should we go ahead and start trading him that's this point in time? Andy Enck, what do you think?
I think they should re-sign him unless they get some sort of crazy trade. Like you alluded to, even when John Wall was here, Beal was kind of in the shadows, the better of the two as far as performance, as far as, dependability. Even though they both kind of had their injuries, Beal did seem to have a little more of the brunt of the work as far as keeping the team afloat. And I can't even remember how long Westbrook's contract is, but those two seem to be really gelling together. So unless there's some crazy trade where they can get a good talent that's younger,
bring him back for next year, kind of see how things start to go.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, what would you do?
So we've covered this before, but I'm not the most well-versed in NBA comings and goings. But to me, it seems like when you have the way to win and the way to be competitive perennially is you have big name players, right? You have a top 15, top 20 guy in the league.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you do whatever you can to stock by those guys. So to me, unless you're going to go down the 76er route and trust the process and acquire draft capital at your yin yang, it makes sense when you have one of these like superstars, these top 15, top 10, whatever you want to classify him as caliber player, you hold on to them. So you kind of get, and then you kind of build around that guy, and then the NBA is also wonky because it seems to me that you trade away sometimes a third of your roster for maybe a top 25 guy. And then there's some weird stuff that I know that goes on, but like I said, I'm not the most well-versed.
With the size of the rosters, you think about like NFL or baseball or something like that, one player can make a difference, but maybe not as drastically as much in basketball. When you have arguably one of the best players in the, of the, 5 players who are starting for you, and one of yours is going to be the best player on the court, that's automatically going to make you more attractive and better than most teams.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sorry. That's a mathematical certainty, right? Like you have,
Sure.
you only can put up 5 guys on the court at one time, and what realistically 7-8 guys on a roster play night in night out, right? So the percent contribution that an individual player provides to the team is so much greater in the NBA than essentially.
And they have a superstar. I mean, and they have arguably 2 of them when they've got Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal both on your roster. You're looking at typically the big teams that are making runs. And when I talk about runs for the playoffs, I'm talking, they have the big 3. And so typically you need 3 players to essentially beat the other team's best 3 players and hope your bench can kind of even each other out. They're one piece really away from being that. The problem I have with that is I don't know if they can bring in another piece. Their biggest opportunity in the whole history of the organization was a few years ago with Kevin Durant, a local kid, coming off a possibility. They had loaded all their space to get him. There was all the, KD, the DMV, and KD to DC, and it never, fruitioned and worked out for him. I don't blame him. So there's part of me that says, what do you want to be? If you want to be mediocre and you just want to make money as an organization, then honestly trade him. You can survive with Russell Westbrook and whatever assets you get, out of that trade and kind of rebuild younger, and just make your team exciting. They can still squeeze out an 8 seed, I think, without Bradley Beal, and all the right, pieces. But if you're trying to win a championship, and I think they want to, I do think that's the goal. Like most organizations, but if you're really trying to win a championship, you're not that far off from competing. I know they got spanked, by the Sixers or 76ers, in the first round, but they're really not that far off in my opinion. But they're going to be off if they lose Bradley Beal. And I'd rather get something of value while you can. Now, I'm sure they're having internal organizational talks as far as, do you want to come back? We're starting to see signs that he's saying no. I could very well see him wanting to go. There's rumors about Golden State making a run for him and putting him out there with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, and just creating, the league's going towards that 3-point shooting, which Beal is an expert, if not the expert on. Sans maybe a Curry and maybe a Damian Lillard. But he is out there to be had. And with something so prized, in all of these discussions, it's always going to be, well, what would you get in return? Because realistically, there is a max value that he can provide. If someone was going to say, LeBron James, you're going to take him, that way. I could see the Lakers trying to make a push for him because they need their big 3 as well. The problem you have too, also with this is injury. And you saw it with the Lakers. The Lakers were highly invested in their top 2 players, both of which got hurt. And they're a completely different team without those top 2 players because you're putting so much of the salary and you're banking so much of your investment into that one player. For me personally, I've tried to get him re-signed, but realistically, I think I look at options for him. And I think I would try to find somewhere to moving depending on what the package, so to speak, would be.
Yeah, I think 2 things that I agree with that you said there that are really important and key to the discussion, right, is strictly economically. Like, if you feel reasonably confident that you can still contend for playoffs, maybe even, well, I guess not win a series if you're coming in at the 8th seed or the 7th seed, that's going to be a tall order. But if you can push late in the season and make an interesting, first round series, and you're still drawing, at the box office, and you're still selling merchandise, and you still got eyes on the TV, like, to your point, like, you're making money if that's what your objective is. Like,
what's your objective? Right.
Yeah. If that extends your runway for a couple of seasons while you retool, collect draft capital, whatever it is, maybe that's not a bad solution.
Yeah. They don't really have like a ton of, picks or anything right now.
It was a weird comparison, but like the Chicago Blackhawks come to mind. Like they had some really good runs, and then they were kind of mediocre while they retooled. They never did the teardown. Like they never got rid of the Taves. They never got rid of the Duncan or Kane or even
right.
Goalie's going to escape my mind right now, but but they kind of slowly, they were mediocre and then retooled. I think that's a possibility. The second thing that I really agree with is if you're going to move him, value, right? Maximize value. If this guy has the value now, move him and get the best return. That's the Sam Darnold conversation, right? Like,
right. That's exactly what I was thinking.
That's kind of like, there's different ways I could have gone with that, but like you end up like a guy's going to have value. Or Teddy Bridgewater is a better example, right? When he played well in the preseason for the Jets a couple seasons ago, he had great value, right? Rather relative to this past
Right.
season where he didn't have a great season, he had lowered his value, right? So like maximizing value is a really important thing too, and you have to be mindful of if you're running an organization.
I don't think it's going to make a difference. I'll be honest with you, because they're never going to be a top 4 seed. They're never. So what's the difference between getting a 5, a 6, a 7, and 8, or not making the playoffs? I honestly don't think it's going to be that much. Do they get more viewership? Sure. But honestly, if you have Russell Westbrook, you're going to get more viewership anyway.
Sure.
So you might as well just get that. Like, and I'd say let the team run through him, load him up with some shooters, see what you can do, and do the best you can. We've said on previous episodes he's kind of a selfish player, and not in a negative way. Just like he does best with individual work. He's going to get the open looks for his players, but his style of play is difficult to play with. Now, if Beal likes that style and he feels like it takes some pressure off him, which he might, because this is going to be the first time in the NBA he's really had that, and he's had another superstar with him. I think we're going to see, can they recruit? I think they're going to spend this entire offseason trying to recruit another superstar, whoever that may be, to see if they can put themselves there. But they realistically have to be a top 3 seed. Like if you don't think you can get to one of those top 3 seeds, because even a 4, I don't think they're going to, be a 4 seed, knock out a 5, and then knock out the 1 to try to get to, the championship. Like, I just don't realistically see that happening. I don't think that's a possibility for them. I don't think they have the draft capital to make anything else happen. I think they're going to have to go get it. And really, if we think about it in 5 years, are we going to go, man, the Wizards were so close only if they did this? Or is it going to be like pretty much every other single year that they've ever existed, where they're somewhere towards the bottom of the playoff realm? They, are kind of exciting to watch at times, which they are right now, or they were this past season. But really, I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference. So get the best value you can. Open the new window. It's time to close this one. You made your run. It didn't work out. And I think that's actually going to be kind of a common theme in some of these conversations we have tonight.
Yeah. So you got other guys on that list?
I do got other ones on this list. Actually, let's go ahead and, since you've got the Oshie stuff up, we're not going to talk about him, but we're going to talk about his boy, free agent Alexander Ovechkin. Alexander Ovechkin has been a Capital for life. Both sides seem to feel like they're going to get something done and make something happen so that he can, be in a Washington uniform. But there are people out there who believe that it might be a better opportunity for them to go ahead and close this window on this team. Go ahead and open several people, including TJ Oshie, Kuzi, Ovechkin. Ovechkin's a free agent, but allow him, to go through and go ahead and start making that rebuild now. They still have enough core players that they could be competitive, but they're not going to be the same team that we've been kind of used to watching. But realistically, it worked. They won their Stanley Cup. They tried to make it happen a couple times in a row. It hasn't really worked out since then. At what point do you give up on it? What do you do with Alexander Ovechkin?
There's no chance. You have a better chance of seeing Jesus playing left wing for the Washington Capitals next year than not Alex Ovechkin, right? I think 3 things. I have at least 2 of them. I might have lost the third one. There's no way they're going to let him walk while he's chasing this Gretzky thing, right? You want to talk about the eyes on the screens and the national, national viewership and the tickets they're going to sell while this is like not unrealistic yet. It'd be a bad look. So this kind of goes into the second thing too. It'd be a really bad look. It kind of undoes the Caps legacy, I guess, of this era. Yeah, because they have been a competitive to dominant.
They're always up there. They're always one of the top teams.
And that kind of like
been their boy.
Pisses that all away if that. Too, he's still really freaking good.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Everybody in North America knows where he's going to shoot from on the power play.
Stop it.
Every year he has double-digit goals on the power play from that same spot, right? He's just so goddamn good. He can take over a game still at 30.
When I see the stat come up that says Alexander Ovechkin scored from a power play, I don't even have to look it up. I know exactly. He was sitting right in his office with everybody else.
He has scored on more goalies than I think the average career goal accumulation for the average player. He's scored on 160 or 170 different goalies. That's
more important for you that he break the record or that they win another Stanley Cup?
God almighty.
Because I think it's a fair question. Because if you told me
I think I'd take another. I think it'd be the Stanley Cup because it's not like not breaking the record is going to do, marginalize what he's done, because he's going to finish.
There's something sweet about saying every single time some new guy's coming up, or they talk about the scoring title, it's no longer Wayne Gretzky. It's
Ovechkin,
Alexander Ovechkin, Washington Capital. I mean,
yeah, no, I get that, but he's, even if he's number 3 on the list all time, like it's
not number 1. It's not number 1.
I don't care. It's still incredible, and like this is a different era of like scoring, and he's it's whatever. No, I think I'd rather have the Stanley Cup than him break the record. If I could only pick one, I'd want another Stanley Cup.
Now, as far as NHL, I'm kind of where Andrew is with NBA. I'm kind of a passive fan at best. I did watch a lot of the Red Wings when they were hot, but I think seeing Ovechkin in a different jersey to end his career would be one of those things they talk about for decades. Like they see the Hank Aaron playing for the wrong team, or Willie Mays, or any of those greats from baseball or basketball playing for. Or the
it
one
happens more though now. I mean, right? I mean, like we see it more and more.
Sure, I think of the guys in the NFL like Brett Favre or Jerry Rice. Now,
that picture of Pippen and Jordan playing for the Wizards and the Portland Trailblazers. It didn't tarnish their legacy, but just one of those things you think, what the bleep is going on? And I really think that not even getting Gretzky's record, but even getting to 800 would be an amazing thing for the Cap fans to see at home.
I don't think there's a chance he leaves. I mean, the only way he gets deported or goes back to the KHL, that's the only realistic option. I honestly think if I'm the organization, I'd probably want the record more than I want the Stanley Cup. And I know that's a terrible business model. I know that's a terrible, idea, to put out there. It's not the team play. It's not that, but there's something about business that says, we have got the all-time great scorer. There's something to that I think they want. And I think that's going to be a little bit more valuable, because I do think they're still going to make their push with him. It's not like they're completely giving up. They're not completely selling out. But I think that's going to be more important than anything else. There's no way they let him go to another jersey until it gets to the point where it's just obnoxiously ridiculous. I mean, we never thought we'd saw Chara in another jersey, but he was wearing red this past year. So it might be like a 1-year deal thing when the team's kind of ready to move on without him. But they're not ready. They're not ready to move on.
No, and Chara played on the Islanders first, like way back in the day.
That's right.
Another thing I thought you mentioned about the KHL, and I think Ovechkin does go back there at some point. I bet it's some money, probably not my mortgage, but some money that his deal is for about 4 years, because I think Backstrom has 4 years left now. And at age 39 or whatever it is, he can leave and go back to the KHL and probably still be the best player in the KHL at like 40.
Yeah, I mean, he wouldn't be the first guy to do it.
Yeah, Yager's still playing. I think he's getting AARP money. Like,
seriously, how old is Jaromir Jagr at this point? Because he was Capital too. By the way,
I think he's 48, 49, something like that. And he's going back to the Jagr play the Czech league. I think the Czech men's league.
Yeah, that's where he's from, right?
Yeah. I think. Well, it's the Czech Republic.
Czech Republic. Sorry, whatever. Yeah.
Moved on.
So read a book, Eric.
Yeah. Geez, open a geopolitical essay every now and again.
Right.
But no, I think the KHL. There's talent over there, but it's not like the NHL. Like Alex Ovechkin at 40, at like 50% would be the best player in the KHL.
And Jaromir Jagr is 49 this year, by the way.
Yeah, there we go. I was close.
Oh my God, I can't believe it. That is crazy. I mean, I remember him. I mean, I remember when he came to the Capitals, and I thought it was a huge deal, and they let him go because he was too old a decade and a half ago. And he's just still out there. But I don't know. What else do you do? I mean, party. I don't know.
I don't know.
I've got a few guesses because I know I've seen him pop up.
I can't imagine he feels his knees or ankles after a game, because I mean, I know we're no world-class athletes, but even at our age, just doing basic stuff would be traumatic to our body.
Break down. He was insane. So Ovechkin stays, though? We think Ovechkin
100%. 100%.
How long of a deal would you sign him for? 4?
4 years.
Okay, I think that's fair.
Three to four, depending on the term too, or the AAV, the contract, the number. I don't think it's gonna be outrageous. He's gonna get a raise. I don't think it's gonna be.
You remember he got a 13-year deal?
Yeah, it's ending this year.
And people lost their minds over it, saying it was a bad.
Now it's maxed out. You can't get any more than 8.
Oh.
Okay. So I do want to just bring up this quick number, by the way. 13 years for $124 million, which was absolutely insane to the membrane at the time. People lost their mind.
$10 million a year.
Bradley Beal is due to make $37 million next season. So just to kind of put things into some perspective. Max Scherzer is another local hero. And I actually put he and Ovechkin kind of in a very similar boat. Now, Ovechkin's more the face of the franchise. Max is the heart and soul, I would say, of the Washington Nationals. But they're struggling this year, and they're a little bit of a different scenario where, they're getting older. They aren't making the push that we kind of thought they were. The magic from, a couple of years ago is worn out. Strasburg's hurt again, shockingly after he signed his major contract. And Scherzer's still out there looking like a Cy Young candidate. If you were going to ever trade him, it seems like now would be your opportune moment. And I'm sure there's plenty of teams out there who'd be willing to sacrifice, whatever it took to get a Max Scherzer on their team. I'm a baseball guy. I do believe there's more to just the contract. I do believe, there's an identity, and I believe that Max is a part of that for the Washington Nationals. But, Andy, I know this is kind of more up your wheelhouse, so I'll start with you. How do you feel about Max Scherzer? What do you think the Nationals should do with him?
Now, if you turn back the clock, 10 years, you had Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander in Detroit. Justin Verlander was easily
David Price.
Easily the better pitcher. But now, 10 years later, Max Scherzer is making a Hall of Fame push here. He's going to be, maybe not a first ballot, but he's definitely going to be close to a first famer. And I think he still has a lot of life left. And I just think even if you're rebuilding, it's hard to really get rid of. He's 37 this year.
Right.
And that is kind of the tail end of any kind of usefulness.
Velocity's starting to trail just a little bit. He's going down.
Slippery slope for pitchers usually once it starts tailing off at all.
Right. And he's having a good year.
I just think he still has a lot of life left. The thing with the Major League Baseball is draft capital is not worth nearly as much as it is in, say, NBA, NFL.
Maybe prospects, right? It's not like you would be trading for draft picks. You more likely be trading for, I need your top 3 guys in your minor league system.
If they were to trade them, it would be to a contender that needs a 5th starter or 4th starter, and they would need to get a couple of prospects that are like a year out. They're not trying to develop down the road. They want guys that are like next year, maybe the year after, are ready to be full-time, big-time NBA players, MLB players. And
they've been surviving off of pitching for years. That's been kind of, they have believed in starting pitching and kind of rebuilding, around that, which is honestly the probably the proper way to do it. You're not going to win without starting pitching. They went out and spent a ton of money on it, and really Max is the only one still living up to that contract. I personally think it's time to let him go. It's not that you want to. It's not that it's going to make the fans happy at all, but I do think this is more of a business deal, and they are not close to competition. I know that things can happen in baseball. I know that, it's 162 games, but this does not look like that team. They are not, and they're just not that team. I don't think it's a money issue either. I think the Lerners have plenty of money to throw at him if they wanted to. They've got, a young core in Juan Soto and Trey Turner. I think you can kind of build around that. They've got, plenty of options to still be competitive, but they need to, kind of make that window more realistic. And I think they need to go trade for some pitching. Andy?
No, I think if they do re-sign Scherzer to probably a more than he's worth kind of deal, that puts them in a position to not be able to re-sign a Soto or a Trey Turner later on. I think that the opportunity cost of signing Scherzer is way greater than what it would cost for them to send him to a very trade deadline deal where there's a contender that is really desperate for that last pitcher they need to be able to do some real damage in the playoffs. I agree. I think it is not that I want him to leave, but I think
no, of course not.
A business choice to be able to send him to a contender. You're kind of sending him off where he could get another ring possibly, but you can also get something in return.
I think it's going to be a mutual. He is the heart and soul of this team. And I know I've said it, 10 different times. He is everything that you want a player to be. And he signed a huge deal and out-pitched that deal. I think at this point you almost need to reward him by sending him to a contender, because the Nats aren't it. And I probably would start looking out west. The Dodgers are always going to be out there. I don't know what they have as far as draft capital at this point anymore. But like the Padres, there's a couple other teams out there. Any team's going to want to have him. I'm sure the New York teams are going to be, interested. I'm sure Boston's going to be interested. There's going to be plenty of teams that are interested. Andy?
I think at this point, it's kind of like who outside of the NL East can we trade him to? You don't want to trade him in your division because then he's
Right.
got
It's not going to be Atlanta. Right.
come back and cut you out somehow.
Maybe a Tampa Bay, someone like that might be like an interesting choice to kind of put them over the top. They're already, one of the top teams in the league. But I agree. I actually think it's about that time for him, and it will crush me. Okay. I thought it looked like you were about to speak. So I was.
No, I was trying to have the argument in my head about like the percent of impact to the team, right? Like a starting pitcher, like what we've talked about Bradley Beal, a starting pitcher is similar, but I'm still like having a hard time supporting the idea of keeping him because like even still like, so you have great value in a starting pitcher that's good, right? You can not guarantee a win every 5 days, but like you feel good about a win every 5 days, right?
Right.
Or if you have somebody that can stop a slump from starting, right? Like, you drop a couple or whatever, and then, okay, Scherzer's going tomorrow. We have a really good chance, right? Like that's a lot of value. But I'm still having a hard time justifying that, like if they are so far away. Maybe that's the difference, right? Maybe they're not as close to being competitive as the Wizards are. So yeah, I think that goes back to that value conversation in terms of like if he's still a perennial Cy Young candidate, like and there's all these other teams in contention that have holes in their rotations or whatever. Or a guy gets hurt in June, we're in June. Like there's a lot of value there and you can recoup some assets, and I agree with Andy. Like I think assets that are closer, so you're not going into, a 3 or 4 year.
You're looking at more AA and AAA guys.
Yeah.
Probably some guys who've already had some big league experience. All right. And the big one, in football, we've got a guy coming up, not this year, but the following season in Lamar Jackson. This is such kind of a unique opportunity. Just because of his style of play. He is an MVP candidate. He leads the Ravens in multiple offensive categories. He's their obvious team leader. He's prevalent, in the Baltimore area as far as, fans rooting for him and relating and identifying with him. I do think, if I'm being honest with you, I do think race plays a factor, in that, Baltimore's primarily a minority area. And they get to see, a black quarterback, leading their team. I do think that factors into this. And he has embraced the city and they have embraced him back. And he's coming up on contract, but his style of play is just, it's different. Even though he hasn't been hurt, we know that the body does eventually wear down. And I don't know if you're going to see, I don't know what to do with him. I know kind of what I think, but I'd like to get your guys' opinion on it first.
Now, as far as his play, I think it's very similar to, say, Barry Sanders, where he might lose a couple yards here or there and not have a good play, but then break off and have an exponentially better play. And people keep talking about how his arm isn't this. He's not a true quarterback. I think he proved last year that not 100%
the last few years. Yeah, I mean, he's proved. I mean, he's a quarterback. I mean, and he's played it well.
I totally agree with that. I still think those haters that are just not going to cling on to those. Oh, he's only got 2 years of good passing yards, and they make these jokes about some other quarterback being better than him as far as throwing it. But I still think, even if he's not, what he gives to you as far as the whole package, as far as your whole offense,
right.
Teams game plan enough for him that it opens up other areas of your offense. So it's really a game-changing position for him to be in. And I think it's very similar to like when Michael Vick was at his prime, and they had to really plan for him to be able to run around and move around and not be sacked so much, to still have an arm to throw it. I really think that it's good for Baltimore to be able to keep him there until he proves otherwise.
3,000 yards in 2019, 2,757 yards. And this is just purely, throwing. So clearly he can throw the football. Total 26 touchdowns last year, 36 touchdowns the year before. He had a better 2019 than he did 2020, but still obviously a stud. Noel, what do you think?
So I have a weird caveat. Can I keep Greg Roman with him?
Well, that's a really, really interesting question. I think you have to.
Because I'm really nervous about if Greg Roman gets a head coaching job next year, the year after next, whatever it is, does the offense still run the same? Lamar Jackson still as successful? And I think that's a really big concern. We can talk about X's and O's another time. I would love to do that. But the thing that like kind of goes underreported is the way Baltimore uses what's called a mesh point, right? So like that point where the quarterback and running back exchange is happening. The next time you watch some Ravens offensive film, every GD time they snap the ball, there is someone in motion blocking the mesh point, right? And that's like a schematic thing. Like this is so like it's very strategic, it's very tactical. Your boy Shanahan and Bob Griffin, the number 3, very similar to what
Bob mythical creature.
Yeah, number 3. A lot of what they were doing at the time was the same thing. It was running a back across, running a tight end across, running somebody like counter motion, whatever, and obscuring the mesh point. So now you have
linebackers hesitate just a little bit.
You have your if you're running some sort of read option or something, you're leaving that last man on the end of the line unblocked. So he's already got to make a two-way read, and now he can't see where the ball's going. So you're making it that much harder. So, and that's like I think Greg Roman did a lot of that with Kaepernick in San Francisco. And I'd have to look up when the timing of like when Kaepernick kind of started his downward slide if Roman moved to Buffalo by that point. But that's a big thing. Going back to the original question, I don't know. I think I give Lamar, I can feel good about a 2 to 3 year kind of guaranteed money. After that, I start to get worried, right? He's very slight. I was worried about how slight he was when he came out. Yeah. He's taken some hits and he's come right back up, and he really hasn't had a lot of injury problems, knock on wood.
Right.
But that's never not going to be in the back of my mind just because he's such a lean frame. And his playing style is different. But it's not, if he doesn't get a contract, it's not because he hasn't earned it. It's just I think there's a lot of.
You can't get mad. I mean, if they give him the money, which he's done everything to earn.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate saying it. It'd be almost a thanks for what you did, but now we're done with you. Now we're on to somebody else because we can predict the future. I want to read something to you guys because I've harped on this for a long time. I really do believe that it's all about value in the NFL. And I do think that quarterbacks can oftentimes get overvalued. So I'm going to read you just a couple things and kind of bear with me on this. These are the division winners from last year. Buffalo, Kansas City, Steelers, Titans, Washington, Seahawks, Packers, and Saints. 3 of these teams, the Packers, the Seahawks, and the Steelers, had quarterbacks with a it was really top 6, but really top 11 salary cap hits at quarterback. The rest of them, Buffalo, Kansas City, I know that Mahomes just signed his deal, but last year he was the 20th ranked. Buffalo was the 24th. Even Tannehill's large contract was still 12th. Washington's wasn't even ranked between. I think it was somewhere high with between Alex Smith and Dwayne.
It was in the outlier pile.
The outlier pile. Now, the Saints also, even with Drew Brees' contract, was still at 13 overall.
Sure.
But the Packers and the Seahawks were number 1 and number 2 in overall quarterback play. Now, those guys or quarterback contract. The number 2 teams were the Dolphins, Raiders, Ravens, Colts, Giants, Rams, Bears, and Bucks. The Raiders and the Rams were the teams that had the highest quarterbacks in that. The Dolphins, the Ravens, the Colts, the Giants, the Bears, and the Bucks all were bottom tier, at least as salary cap hits. And those are your winners. The top guy was Matt Ryan. And they had one of the top 3 picks in the NFL draft.
Sure.
So what I think happens is traditionally you see these guys make these great runs, make a great name for themselves, and then they give them that big contract and they just can't be the same team anymore because they don't have the pieces around them. And I worry about that with Baltimore. If they're going to give him that big contract and they can't afford, look out, because they're going to have to try to find some deals and try to find some value everywhere else. I still believe we had a kind of initial conversation about this, almost looking at it, like you said, like a senior versus a freshman, or having, rotating guys in, and going younger and developing guys, knowing that, hey, we're going to get you to this point and then we're going to send you on your way. Go get your contract. You've earned it with us, but this is not our organizational philosophy.
2 things. I forgot the first one. Okay. So what you're talking about is rookie contracts, right? Maximizing the value of a
rookie contracts.
You talk about Cleveland, you talk about New York, you talk about Miami, Buffalo, all these guys on rookie contracts. And that kind of goes to your kind of program, college program idea, which we talked about previously. Milk everything you can out of that rookie deal, draft the next guy, and rinse and repeat. But we talked about that's really hard to hit on those guys, and where does that, does that put you back in the cellar, etc. The question though is, if you're going to do you let somebody like Lamar Jackson walk for nothing? Because that's kind of crazy too, because you get your 3rd round compensatory pick in like 2 drafts or whatever. The Ravens and their fans love those.
Yeah.
But like how do you?
So at the end of this season,
That's tough. Well, that's the thing is like,
and also his cap hit goes from something ridiculous. I think he goes up to like $23 million.
His 5th-year option. But I'll tell you, I think there's 30 some odd teams that would take Lamar Jackson on for a year on $23 million. Yeah.
Well, the football team would be one of those teams.
So I think it's hard. I think, you're right. I think you'd exercise that option and then try to trade him for, the world next season. But like, then you're the team that traded Lamar. There's a lot of
But you know what? I was looking at that list again. So I can find it. But like the list of the top tier quarterbacks, or top salary chunk quarterbacks, Matt Ryan, Kirk Cousins was on that list. It was top 3. I wish Joe were here to talk about how much he loves Kirk Cousins.
He'd trade for him.
But yeah, see if he would trade someone for him. But it really was. It's kind of eye opening. It seems like you almost have to go in ebbs and flows, like and if it's me, as much as you hate to say it, and I know it sells tickets, I think you have to let these guys go. This is such a long conversation for it.
Yeah.
But there's so much balance between that window, and I think you have to build everything else around it. I've described it before. It's like building a house. You've got to have a foundation before you can put a house on it. And once you put a house on it, and that house is fully, stable, then you can start buying the sports car, because you can now afford the insurance and you can afford to have it there. And I'm not getting my skill position players. I'm not getting my quarterback until I have everything else, filled in. And quite frankly, some of those guys, skill positions don't last as long as some of like your linemen. Running back's not going to have as long a career as a lineman.
Unless you're Frank Gore.
Yeah, unless you're Frank Gore, who's still playing somewhere.
Yeah, he's gonna play longer than Yarmir Yager. So the thing that I would kind of caution about that is, not caution rather, but like that might change that is we'd have to look at how other non-quarterback salaries have changed over the last, say, 6 years. That's the salary cap gotten
We're
crazy.
starting to see some defensive players on that list.
Yeah. So my question is like, as the salary cap gets further and further into like monopoly money, does that even matter anymore?
So that's my next question too. I mean, like, and really, I don't think we're gonna have time for it. We're actually kind of getting close towards the end of our time. But really, that salary cap is going to be interesting. Now, he's going to be a very happy man because he's going to get paid a ridiculous amount of money.
Oh yeah.
Josh Allen, I think, are going to be the 2 happiest guys on the planet.
Yeah, they're going to be in the same ballpark as Mahomes. There's no way they're not.
But no, absolutely, and especially with that salary cap hit that you're talking about. If that really does go up, like they're kind of anticipating it going, and plus the additional year that's on contracts now, or the additional game that's on every season, that's going to require some additional compensation as well.
We're gonna have a $50 million a year player in a couple of years.
Without a doubt. I don't think
Kyle Wilson. Not Kyle Wilson. I knew I was to do that. That's the guy that played cornerback like 15 years ago. Zach Wilson.
Zach, your boy, that'll be just in time for
a
good deal. Gentlemen, we have less than a minute to go. We did not even get a chance to talk about why the decline in baseball is. I did a one-person survey with my daughter, who's 12 years old, and I said, "Why don't you watch baseball?" And her quote was, "Because it's boring AF." So and she did say AF. She's a lady. So. I believe that's kind of my answer for right now, but we can get into that conversation another time. But gentlemen, with our lack of time coming out, I can't believe it. Let's raise it up.
Yeah, mine's invisible.
Yeah. Goodbye to your land shark, dude.
Yeah.
Drink a Mully's instead. It'll never leave you. It only leaves you satisfied. All right, guys. You have a great week. We'll do it again next week. Talk to you guys soon.
Cheers.